I'm Ruby Jones, and you're listening to 7am. Australia's neo-Nazis are forming secret mothers groups and have plans for a network of homeschools for their children. When a government minister expressed concern, she was threatened, the latest in a string of threats against female politicians by neo-Nazis. Now, the federal police have raised the alarm, raising questions about the risk of political violence. Today, crime reporter at The Age, Sherryn Groch, on the National Socialist Network's threats and whether authorities are doing enough to stop them. It's Tuesday, December 9. So, Sherryn, can we begin by talking about this homeschooling network that the NSN, the National Socialist Network, says that it's running? When did you first hear about this?
So the National Socialist Network, they're Australia's biggest neo-Nazi group, and they've been kind of riding a wave of infamy of late off the back of all these stunts they've been doing. That includes secretly organising the March for Australia anti-immigration rallies.
If we do not maintain our demographics, if we do not stop immigration, then our death is certain.
And that's where their leader, Thomas Sewell, was charged with assault for allegedly storming an Indigenous camp afterwards and attacking counter-protesters. So it was at his bail hearing for that, actually. Sewell was arguing he's a family man, his group have been running all these community events, and he let slip they were building homeschool networks too.
The far-right activist revealed his educational aspirations in a court hearing in September, claiming his National Socialist Network is looking to expand into homeschooling.
I've noticed the NSN's mothers group have been growing a lot lately. They'll often post pictures of all the Nazi trad wives getting together with their little ones. So I thought, look, I'll take a look. And I found they've actually been building this network of family cliques, as Sewell calls them, around the country for about a year now. Sewell had laid out his plans to form a school of sorts too big for the government to shut down maybe around last year. And they've spoken a bit about it in their internal chats, some of which have been leaked to me. So Sewell basically wants to create what he calls a parallel economy and a society for white people before he gets around to actually deporting all the people of colour, which the group also want to do. But experts are worried they're trying to mould their own Hitler soldiers with this. I mean, one parent of a former Nazi recruit told me he's heard about all these second-generation Nazis or kids of members joining their stunts, and I've noticed a few of them as well.
Right. Okay, and so over the weekend, the Victorian government spoke about this. It said that it had gone to the education regulator and asked it to investigate the matter. So tell me more about how the Victorian government is responding and what we're hearing then from the NSN.
Yes, so once Sewell mentioned that in open court, the Victorian government decided we better take a look.
Well, I don't think there's any place for hate anywhere in this state, and particularly not in any kind of educational system.
It's also a crime to run an unregistered school. In February here, the Allen government increased penalties for those who don't comply with child safety rules and other standards like that. So the NSN weren't happy to hear this. Sewell has said before if the government ever try to come for their kids, that is when he'd become a terrorist and start killing people. That's a direct quote. So then one of the government ministers, Gabrielle Williams, she was asked about this on the weekend and she said she was worried action might be needed.
These allegations will be of great interest to the Victorian regulator in assessing what may be going on and what action may need to be taken.
Very quickly, one of the senior Nazis in the group, a guy called Jimmy Roberts, he started targeting her online. He posted her photo on Telegram and he had a bit of a warning saying Gabrielle should be wary of the rhetoric she's engaging in. And he made a few other posts as well where he railed about the government policing white people educating their kids and In one of those posts, he said Newton's third law might be that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, but Jimbo's first law is fuck around and find out.
Okay. And what about Thomas Sewell? He is, as you say, he's the leader of the NSN. He was released on bail recently. What have we heard from him since then?
Yes, so he was released after all that. He's out on bail, and he had a big homecoming of sorts actually the other weekend, with a record number of Nazis turning up to train with him in a Melbourne park for their monthly boxing sessions. But what caught my interest was his appearance on a show with a British white supremacist last week. Sewell vowed to make an example of his enemies in Australia that would make the murderous rampage and planned race war of Charlie Manson's cult look moderate. And these are some of his first public comments since he was released on bail. He was on there also bragging about all the money and influence now flooding to his group as its recruitment numbers soar. And unfortunately, he's right, they are growing, and other extremists overseas are really rallying around them. That's the context of this new homeschooling headmaster, I guess.
Coming up, the threats to female politicians and a warning from the federal police. Sherryn, these threats to Minister Gabrielle Williams, they haven't happened in isolation. Last month, 2 Nazis were charged by the Australian Federal Police over threats to federal MPs. Tell me about that.
Yes, so last month was a big one for the NSN. Our papers got a tip they were going to hold a rally outside New South Wales Parliament, and sure enough, they turned up with their banners chanting Hitler Youth slogans like blood and honour.
Blood and honour!
We've since unmasked a lot of them, particularly my colleagues at the Sydney Morning Herald. Allegra Spender was one of the first politicians really condemning that action online, and she and another female MP, Kelly Sloan is actually now the New South Wales Liberals' new head. They both started getting threats and nasty comments for speaking out. Pretty quickly, one message appeared on Telegram that really stood out. It was from a prominent figure in the NSN, Joel Davis. He urged his supporters to rhetorically rape Allegra Spender. He was linking to her post and calling on their far-right army of social media trolls to pile on and abuse her, basically. But Spender reported it to the AFP and he was arrested, and he's been refused bail, actually, so he's still in custody.
Yesterday, an investigation undertaken by the National Security Investigations Team in New South Wales led to the arrest and charging of a 30-year-old man for the offence of using a carriage service to harass a federal member of Parliament.
A day after that, another neo-Nazi in Melbourne was charged for harassing Senator Lydia Thorpe. He was making threatening calls, sending emails. He even stomped on an Indigenous flag outside her office, according to police. And another man in Tamworth was charged for making threats to the Prime Minister online.
The 29-year-old Tamworth man is accused of harassing a high office holder online, who 7 News understands was Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
We don't know if that guy was a Nazi, but when police raided his house, they said they found a gel blaster rifle, ammo. So he's now been charged with weapons charges as well.
Right, okay, so at this stage there's threats, there may also be weapons involved. So how big is the risk here of political violence or some sort of attack?
The AFP came out last week with all these arrests and said, yes, these threats to politicians are becoming a big issue for them.
Threats against federal parliamentarians is a significant issue for us, and we are on the record previously talking about the year-on-year increase that we're seeing in relation to threats. It's at 63% over the last 4 years, and in the financial year of 24-25, we've seen upwards of 951 referrals or threats against parliamentarians.
We've reported a lot on this group having really close ties to extremists around the world, including designated terror groups like the Base, who have recruited NSM members before. But security services always say the group has to be caught in the act of planning a terror attack to meet their threshold for being designated themselves. And designating the NSN is something the group is really worried about, as it was a strong tactic used to disband Nazi groups in places like the UK. So at the moment, obviously, people are worried. The climate is really heightened. A lot of this, though, for the Nazis seems to be around the theatre of it, being seen to bully their enemies into silence. They call it ratioing, when they ratioed Kelly Sloan and Allegra Spender, claiming victory that way. They're now also trying to push into politics and try and sort of indoctrinate and recruit more members of the public under this kind of cloak of being everyday Australians with, legitimate concerns about immigration. So it is sort of hard to say how this is going, but certainly police are watching them really closely, and so is ASIO.
Yeah, and as you say, this is all coming in the context of the NSN becoming more public, more vocal with these recruitment drives, rallies. So can you tell me a bit about how you are thinking about their growth at the moment and why it's happening right now?
Well, the NSN has, for a while now, been one of the most high-profile Nazi groups in the world. I hate to mention that because they love the publicity, but their numbers aren't huge, but they run a particularly effective active club model, basically, where they get these young, vulnerable men in for boxing and training boot camps, camping trips, and then they start with the Hitler worship. But in the past year, I've noticed they've really gone into this recruiting overdrive. Those numbers seem to be doubling, especially in Melbourne and New South Wales. And they've been pulling all kinds of stunts to hijack the national debate. I mean, you might remember they were booing during the Anzac Day dawn service. They were ambushing politicians on the federal election trail, including the Prime Minister. We revealed all of that at the time as being this coordinated push to look like everyday Aussies. They also seem to be going after people with money and influence. And, they've recruited quite a lot of rich young men lately from pretty influential families. So they're also trying to form this neo-Nazi political party. They're actually saying now that, at least they're claiming they've signed up the 1,500 members they need to register a federal neo-Nazi party, and they're really planning to go after the upcoming state elections in New South Wales and Victoria too. They're wary of police crackdowns because there's been a lot lately, and they're trying all different kinds of tricks. They're also very emboldened by the success, by the publicity they've had of late. So we've sort of hit a bit of a tipping point where it's quite hard now to ignore them. I mean, often as journalists, we don't want to give these guys oxygen, but what they're doing, the tactics they're using are quite scary and quite effective, and they're worthy of exposing.
Do you think that they will be able to get to the point of running candidates? Does that seem likely?
Well, look, that's their plan, and they certainly are giving it a crack. They've been thinking about things like preference deals. They've been thinking about, how big a percentage of the vote they'd actually have to get, and they've said that they think their best shot is in New South Wales and Victoria because of their electoral rules. Their goal really is to take votes away from the Liberal Party so they can form a coalition with other far-right groups who are sympathetic to some of their views. But once you're threatening people with violence, can you really then stand in Parliament and say you're an upstanding citizen? We'll have to wait and see, but certainly people are starting to wake up and take them seriously.
Sherryn, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Ruby.
Also in the news, there are only a few more current MPs in federal parliament that One Nation leader Pauline Hanson would be open to recruiting. Hanson made the comments after it was finally confirmed that Barnaby Joyce would be joining her party after his recent defection from the Nationals. Hanson said she's opened roughly 70 branches across the country in the last couple of months, part of her expansion effort, as the far-right party performs historically well in the polls. And the federal government will not extend the subsidy for household electricity bills, the Treasurer has confirmed. The subsidy of $75 per quarter per household started in mid-2023 and was extended twice due to cost of living pressures. Chalmers said it was a hard decision to scrap the discount, but it had to be done because of budget pressures. I'm Ruby Jones, this is 7am, thanks for listening.